So are we recording, Amanda? Yes, we are.
Recording is on and your video is still on, in case you're wondering.
It is still on. Oh, all right. Hello, everybody out there in the audience. Turning my video off to focus on this presentation. So today we're going to talk about member experience. This is, being recorded. If you want to talk, you can unmute yourself. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. As I mentioned prior to this starting, was an AmeriCorps program director for 11 years. And I have been doing program development consulting with ServeRI for 3 or 4 years now. So that's the expertise that I bring to this. And I worked on this presentation with Adam to help prepare you for your grant application. So our learning goals for today are that you'll have a better understanding of the importance of member experience to community service, that you'll understand the various components of member experience, and that you'll understand the expectations for the member experience in the RFP. So the first part of the presentation will really be talking about 1 and 2 blended together, because member experience touches every part of your program. And so I sort of want to give you that broad overview that impacts your program development, and then we'll get down to the nuts and bolts about what's expected in the actual application. So let's start big picture. What's the purpose of AmeriCorps? To unite America, to bring together people of all different backgrounds, to serve communities, and also to enrich the lives of those we serve, as well as those who serve. So that all comes down to the importance of, a key component of that is the importance of member experience. Community service can't happen without a positive member experience. You need members to serve. And also just the utilitarian front, it is an important part of your grant. It's 22% of how your grant is evaluated. So it's an important part that you need to put thought into, and then obviously need to think about how to communicate that in the proposal. So as I mentioned in the beginning, member experience has lots of components. It's not just one thing. It is woven throughout the program. So if we start up at on this chart at kind of maybe 11 o'clock, you'll see it's going to start with recruitment. That's the entree for your members, and then you have to orient them, and then you have to provide ongoing training so they know how to do the service they're asked to do and know how to get better at doing it. They need individual development. Each of your people is going to come from a different place, and they may need different support and training. And they obviously need supervision. They've never done this before, and you're the experts in this area. So they need people who can give them guidance and set those expectations. Another important piece of member experience is compliance. This is an AmeriCorps grant. It is a federal program, so there are compliance requirements, and we'll talk about some of those. It's not just any old volunteer, or nor is it bringing on an employee who has specific labor laws that apply to them. AmeriCorps really has its own set of standards that you need to comply with to support them. Now, members also, are expecting to have meaningful service in the work they do to engage them. And so figuring out what that is. A member does not want to spend an entire year at the copying machine. So figure out how to build in work that is of service and engages the member in that service. Service reflection is a really important of that individual development and that growth and engagement, and what separates AmeriCorps from just a typical volunteer. We throw in here Justice Talks, which I'll talk a little bit later, which is a program that ServeRI offers to help you as your program with service reflection. And we also need to help prepare these AmeriCorps members for life after AmeriCorps. What are they going to do next? This is in part a workforce development program to help people be more engaged, productive citizens, and support them on that road. And recognition is just really important as well as part of the member experience. Everybody wants to be thanked and appreciated for the work that they do. So, we could probably keep building on this chart and add, another 10 parts of components, or break these up into subs, but this is just to give you an idea of the range of things that you need to be thinking about when you think about planning an AmeriCorps grant and planning a program for your team of AmeriCorps to provide service. I'm going to repeat a slide that Adam shared on, I think, the first set of this series. This is sort of another way to think about managing the member experience, that you've got these this main pathway of you've got this project where you're taking and you need to recruit them, you need to train them, you need to place them. I didn't talk about that in the last slide, but many of you will have your AmeriCorps members serving at multiple sites, which aren't necessarily in your home office where you are. So thinking thoughtfully about that placement, and they need to be supervised as they go along. So this is just another way to think about the scope of the member experience. And so you're thinking about your program, you're thinking about all these parts that you need to hone together, and then you have these individuals. And they're individuals, and each of you has a unique program, and that has unique characteristics. And so really the successful program, a successful member experience, is matching up those individuals with the characteristics of your program. Obviously, just looking at this picture, you're going to need different sets of skills to be tutoring than you are going to be to doing, disaster cleanup. And so how do you find that match so that there's that synergy? So and along with that sort of goes this idea of like, what is the member, what's in it for the member? What is the member bringing to the table here? So thinking about them too, most AmeriCorps members come because they want to make a difference. They see things happening in the world, and they want to be a productive part of the solution. Again, they don't want to stand at the copier. They want their skills and talents to be used in the world. They want to grow and learn. Many of them, you have, it depends, in your population, but, sometimes you have members who are, just out of college, and they really want this intensive experience of service to grow personally and professionally. Others are maybe just out of high school, and this is, their first quote unquote job experience. So they want that professional career pathway of, what does it mean to work in a team and work in this kind of setting? Other people are really taking a shift in their life. They've been doing one thing and they're like, I really, thought maybe I want to get into education, or maybe I want to do this. So, they have personal reasons for coming. And with that, they're very focused on thinking as well in the back of their mind of what I'm going to do next. How is this going to help me in my future career, my future goals, the future ways I want to serve. And they're working really hard for not a lot of financial compensation. So it's really, I think, in that context, important to understand that they need support in all of that, because we're asking a lot of them. So sort of taking all of that into the shaping of sort of these big ideas that you'll use then to get down to the tactical specifics of what the member experience is and how you can help shape and support that. Any questions before I move on? I'm sort of big ideas right now, but I'll just pause for a moment if there's any questions. And I'm going to do this as sort of, I'm going to have a couple sidebars here where I'm going to bring in some of the key principles that are in the ServeRI state plan. That is, in sort of typical nonprofit parlance, you might think of that as the strategic plan for ServeRI, and thought about guiding principles. And one of those is inclusion. And this applies not only to the communities we serve, but also to the members, the individuals who make up our teams. So this is about, creating, again, that member experience that welcomes a diversity of people with abilities and people from different backgrounds, and also can emphasize, local strengths. And there's a commitment in AmeriCorps to try to make service available to people from the communities that we're serving. So kind of keep this concept in mind too as we move forward. So I've sort of thrown out all these big, these ideas of like, you've got, thinking about the individuals, thinking about the broad scope of your program, thinking about all these components. But all of this really has to be guided by your theory of change. And in reading the RFP, you'll see that the foundation of your grant is that theory of change. And again, the theory of change is your community need, what's the intervention, and what's the expected results that'll happen from that. So, for example, if your community need is low literacy, and your intervention is going to be a reading program, and you hope your results are going to be that you'll have better scores on literacy exams, then that means you're going to be looking for a member that has certain characteristics that will support that, versus if your community need were something else. So, a really important place to start is to think is, what are the characteristics of the ideal AmeriCorps member for your program? So what are the knowledge, skills, and education they should bring? What kind of experiences should they have? Would it be good if they had experience working with kids? Have they had experience in rural setting and inner city setting? Would it be good if they'd had experience working on teams or working independently? Are you looking to support people who are just out of high school and will need some more coaching about basic workplace skills? Is that part of your mission? And thinking that those are, that age group would really connect well with young kids. And so that's an important one for us. Are you looking for a mix of generations? Are you looking for building a team that is really entirely from the communities you serve? Or do you want to bring people from different regions? Are you trying to recruit externally? What interests, what passions do you want them to have? This, is the this is basically the foundation of your position description. But you have to know this and know this, how this fits your program, because it'll look different from program to program, depending on what that theory of change is. And this also will inform what kind of training they will need. So obviously, if they need to be delivering a reading program, they're gonna have to be trained on certain foundations of literacy and what the expectations of that program are. And so as you're working on your position description and thinking about that need, you can start putting placeholders in for the training that that AmeriCorps members will need to be onboarded. Now, so you've identified, what you're looking for. So then you need to move into recruitment. I think it's really important that you understand that the relationship with an AmeriCorps member starts with recruitment. What you can, the position description communicates a set of expectations. How you communicate with them. Do they feel welcome? Do they feel informed? Are they understanding what they're going to be getting into? Or do they understand how they're going to be spending their time? You really can end up with mismatches in your member experience when someone comes and they said, but well, nobody told me that 2/3 of my time was going to be spent doing X, Y, Z. So how can you clearly communicate to them? And how can you also model the kind of communication style that you want from them? And then you learn from them in the process. You sort of, as you get to know them through their application process or through their interview, you discover that person's really strong in this area, but probably is going to need some coaching and mentoring in that area. Or boy, half our team really is a little weaker in this area than we would want. So we're going to need to add some more training in. So really think of your member experience starting with recruitment and starting with that relationship. Okay, we're going to jump to another sidebar here. This is another ServeRI principle, and that's of equity. Again, thinking about this member and their needs, it's hard being a member and being in service. And there's this negotiation that happens between the member in this community they're serving of, what's my role? Am I welcomed here? Am I, is this a value, or am I an outsider coming in? And so this is hard and can be supported by the whole, a well-run program can sort of minimize some of those challenges. And a well-supported member can be sort of guided to navigate through this. For some people, this was the first time they've done this kind of service. It's kind of mind-blowing to them, so how do you support them in that? And so I really think of this as one of the entrees into thinking about the care and feeding, as I call it, that AmeriCorps members will need throughout the year. So obviously they're going to need onboarding, but they're going to need ongoing training. So that would be, for many programs, that looks like, an hour and a half every Friday, and then, or, once, plus, quarterly retreats of some kind. It's going to shift to your program what exactly that looks like, but it needs to be consistent throughout the year. That sense of building a team, this is a state and national program. You're bringing on a team, even if they're at different locations. That camaraderie they have is really important to support each other, and both in terms of logistically to be able to scaffold each other with skills. But also, it can get hard in February. So you want them to have that sense of having each other and being in it together. Again, talked about these are individuals. They will need individual support, either specific skill development or just, specific challenges with these new experiences. And, you know, I like to think about as coaching and mentoring throughout the year, and finding ways that they can be coached and mentored by their supervisors and the other staff that they have contact with. And of course, recognition is really important as they go through their year. So again, they take this what I call care and feeding. So what does this training look like in practice? So a required component of AmeriCorps is that AmeriCorps members all have what we call pre-service training or pre-service orientation. For many of the current teams in Rhode Island, that looks like usually kind of over a period of 2 weeks, a bunch of training that is everything from here's how to fill out your time cards to here's our policies about where you can go in the building and, where you can eat your lunch, very basic things like that, to the mission of your organization, to understanding how the organization connects with the service that you're asking them to do. And then that orientation should also include sort of the content of what you're going to do. What are some initial skill building or knowledge areas that you need to support them with? And that team building also goes in that area. Talked about that ongoing regular group training, times that they can come together, they can share, you can provide content for them, you can address specific, hey, looks like everybody's having a challenge with kids coming late to your class, and how do you, let's talk about how strategies you can use to support that, for example. Certainly another component of training is that life after AmeriCorps or career development. And that can be woven in throughout the year. And, sometimes that's, again, very direct, as doing, having someone do a resume training session. Other times it's more on life skills about managing your time, or thinking about career goals. So lots of ways that can be done, lots of examples and resources from other programs that you can pull from to do that. Performance evaluation. This is not officially a training, but it's an important part of that training. So certainly if you have AmeriCorps members who are more than just a few months, you need to be doing a midterm evaluation and a year-end evaluation. That evaluation really helps you understand where they still need more training and how they're doing. It also is an opportunity for them to help assess and understand where the training has supporting them. It's a good reflection way for them to help understand how far they have come. But that's an important part of AmeriCorps, is building in an evaluation system. And then we talked about reflection being a really key part of the member experience. We hope that you will do that some on your own, but Serve Rhode Island also offers an annual program called Justice Talks that supports that. Now, training can come from lots of different places. So as a program manager, I would do a lot of the training. Different staff at my organization would do the training, but I'd also bring in external partners or consultants. So, had someone from one of the colleges come and do resumes, had someone from DCYF come and do some on child safety and child protection, whatever those expertise are that you can bring in. So you don't have to have all the knowledge. As the program manager, you don't have to have it all figured out. You can certainly draw on resources from other sources to support this training. So we talked a little bit about reflection, and I'm going to use this to lead into another one of those guiding principles of Serve Rhode Island, ServeRI from the state plan. And that's the importance of civic reflection and service learning. We firmly believe that an important value of the AmeriCorps member experience is that these people will be lifelong, more engaged, more deeply committed to their communities, and we want to support that. So we ask you to integrate that into your program. Evaluations, as I mentioned, are an important part of that. Some people do journals or portfolios. Some people do specific training sessions. Sometimes people will bring in an external consultant to do reflection on a particular topic, or to do, I'm just remembering we used to do this great know your leadership style, where you move around the room, and then then we do it at the beginning of the year and end of the year. And so again, that was like a large group activity way to do reflection about how you changed over time. So lots of fun ways you can do this, lots of important ways. Those ways also help you again understand how your team is doing and what support they need. Now, as I mentioned briefly, ServeRI Island does this Justice Talks program. Justice Talks typically happens in the winter. It's usually 5 or 6 meetings, and it's cross-core. So this has a real value of members getting to meet some members outside their team and discover that, oh, your AmeriCorps experience is different, or you're working that community, or hey, we're working with the same communities. What's our cross experience? And then each team kind of has its own culture. Again, if you've got that team that's doing disaster relief and that one that's doing education, now they get to have a conversation about what service means to them and what civic engagement means to them. They may have some very different experiences that they can share from each other. So it's a really, I would say majority of the members say this is one of the highlights of their year. And it takes takes an important piece of this reflection work off of your lap, enables you to know that there's this quality program being done, and it's led, these discussion groups are facilitated by community members. So they then also get interaction with other folks. And you might, sometimes program directors also jump in as well, but it's a real wonderful way to expand your team's context. Okay. Whew. So covered a lot here. So the big idea of member experience is that members that are well-trained and well-supported result in service to the community. I'm going to pause here for a moment before we jump into the specifics of the grant. This is a great time if anybody has questions about what I meant by something here, or I'll just pause for a moment. I'm going to take a sip of water. Well, if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat. All right, I'm going to keep moving along here. So let's talk about including all of this that I talked about into your grant. So member experience has many components. The grant requires you to succinctly describe several key components of the member experience. You don't have a lot of characters. And it's really important to illustrate how you will do these. That is what will make your application stand out. So it's not the easiest thing to do, so good succinct writer is helpful. I'm just going to make a note here that if you do receive a grant, ServeRI has many resources and templates that'll help you manage many parts of the member experience. So if you're, we have a template for, a guide for position descriptions. We have templates for examples of pre-service trainings that people have done and those timelines. So there's a lot of shared peer knowledge here, so you don't have to build things completely from scratch. So there are several parts where member experience is explicitly addressed. Remember I talked about there being 22 points total. Oh, ironically, we're on slide 22. That's kind of cute. The first section I'm going to talk about is the one that's entitled Member Experience and Training, and this is worth 12 points. One of the key components of that is talking about your recruitment plan. this is where it's important for you to be thoughtful about how are you going to be inclusive of people with disabilities and people from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds to know about your program, to be interviewed for your program, and to be successful in your program. So that's something of great value, not only to ServeRI, but to AmeriCorps National. Another key component is that recruitment from the communities that you're serving. So I think there was a trend for some programs for a while to, recruit recent college grads from out of town and have them go and do service. And so really making sure that we're not just emphasizing that. That's an important goal to give, to connect those skills and talents of recent college grads and connect them to the ideas of service. But how can we also lift up the communities we're serving and offer them opportunities? And also, how can we value what the experiences that they bring because they know those communities? So think about what could this look like in your program, and how is this into your recruitment plan? So where are you recruiting? What are you communicating? How are you recruiting to ensure that your pool will be welcoming and hopefully include members of both these groups? And I sort of addressed this already, but this is, so then once you get them in here, so you've got people and you've got, this really diverse group. You've got, someone who's just out of high school, someone who's, a career changer in their 50s who wants a different experience. You've got someone just out of college. How do you support them all to be successful in service delivery? So what's the quality that is an inclusive service culture that recognizes and values those and supports them to be successful? So that's the member training experience piece. Except for this other piece that I forgot to mention, which is skill development. So, so you have this inclusive environment, but you also need to make sure that they have skills. So think of that in two key areas. What are the skills that they're necessary to perform the service? Do they need to learn how to use certain tools, whether it's on the computer or manual tools? Do they need certain knowledge base? Do they need a knowledge of the community they're working with? Do they need knowledge of a certain curriculum? What are those specific skills to perform the service? And then again, thinking about those lifelong skills, time management skills, leadership skills. What are those things that they will carry with them forever, that will also help them in your program? Okay, so now we're done with member experience and training section of the RFP. I'm going to move on to compliance and accountability. This is 6 points, or 6% of the application. This is about monitoring and oversight of rules and regulations. The two areas in particular that AmeriCorps is very concerned about. One is criminal history checks. They want us to ensure that the communities we serve are safe, and so that we're recruiting members who have adequate background checks. I will say that AmeriCorps has very prescribed procedures. They may be different than the procedures that you have in your organization. So this is, and it's not flexible. So it's just very important that you understand the importance of this in your program development, but also that you communicate that you understand the importance of this. The second key, really important area of compliance and accountability, in addition to sort of just all the general rules and regs, is this idea of prohibited activities. And this in part, I'll just say has come because AmeriCorps was developed out of legislation and out of compromises that happened at the congressional level. And over the decades, different pieces have been added to it to ensure that service is not falling into areas that are not appropriate for a federal program. So these prohibited activities are all things that people can do on their own time, but they just can't do them while they're serving or while they're wearing their AmeriCorps uniform. So, obviously, because again, we're a federal program, we have to be nonpartisan, so they can't be engaging in political activity. We're separation of church and state, they can't be participating in religious activity, benefiting for profits. Also, there's impairing collective bargaining, voter registration, or educating about abortion services. So these are, there's a longer list, but these are probably the kind of the 6 hottest topics on that list. It's pretty easy to design your program not to be conflicting with any of these. So I just say, as a program manager, you think, oh my gosh, all this long list, but for most of the work you're going to do, there's really very little chance they're going to overlap. It is always challenging in an election year like this to remind members that they can have their own personal opinions off the clock, but while they're in service, they need to stay nonpartisan. So the next area is member supervision. Obviously, if you've got this training, this orientation, and you've got to be thinking about compliance, you're going to need some supervision. The RFP, we really want to see that you are able to provide sufficient guidance and support. And how your AmeriCorps members will be adequately trained, and how your supervisors will be trained and be able to support them. Because again, AmeriCorps is a little bit different beast. It's not just a volunteer, it's not just an intern, it's not a standard employee. So sort of backing out what those pieces are. So helpful things to address are who will supervise your members? Is it someone at the site? Is there one key person in your program who's going to supervise everybody? Are they, in smaller sub-teams? What is the timeline of activities for training the supervisors and then the members? And what's the feedback communication mechanism with supervisor and AmeriCorps member? I've certainly seen positions where someone's idea of supervision is, well, they came to work, they showed up. It's like, no, supervision there is that feedback and communication that happens for that ongoing care and feeding. And so thinking about what that is, and then communicating in your grant, these key components. And that is a wrap, as it were. I am going to, somebody put something in the chat. Let me see. Yes, Adam just noted it's very common that applicants skip or forget to address the training of supervisors of the members. Particularly if you're asking people outside of your organization, so you're placing people in an after-school program and you're expecting them to supervise. They haven't been in this, they aren't writing this grant, they don't know these things. So it's really important that you are thinking about how you're training them so that they know what those expectations are. I am going to, I think, Amanda, maybe this is the time that we stop recording and say thank you to our viewers online who are going to be watching this later. And then I'll just open it up for questions that people have of myself or Adam.